Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm glad to see you all together during our meeting, which is held thanks to research platform Disability Studies in Eastern Europe Reconfigurations. Just because of organizational problems and some challenges on the way, I would like to say sorry to you because of the absence of Mrs. Izabela Sopalska-Rybak. And I would like to, before we will start our real part, I would like to give the voice for Milena Trojanowska to explain this absence. So, yeah, welcome.
Thank you so much. So my name is Milena Trojanowska, and I'm supposed to be a co-host of this meeting, but unfortunately, my dear guest, Izabela Sopalska-Rybak, she had a car accident like yesterday. She's okay, she's fine, but she's not able to take part in this meeting, and I would like to also apologize to you because of this inconvenience, but my part of the session will be rescheduled. I don't know yet to what date, but I think you will be informed. So now I would like to say I'm sorry, and I just want to give a voice to Monika and Gilli, and thank you for an opportunity to explain this situation. Thank you.
I hope that with Mrs. Izabela everything will be fine and that she will back to health soon. But right now, let's come back to our main topic, which is discussing autoethnographic aspects of disability and the case of disability studies, especially. Today, our hosts are Monika Dubiel and Gilli Hammer. I will just only shortly introduce them. Monika Dubiel holds master degrees from University of Warsaw in psychology and Spanish philology, and Gilli Hammer is an associate professor in the Department of Sociology and Anthropology and the program in Cultural Studies at the Hebrew University of Jerusalem. I'm really glad to see you both today's afternoon. And I would like to give the voice to you. So please feel welcome to start your discussion. And I hope that this meeting will be interesting for each of us.
Thank you so much. Thank you for introducing us, and thank you for opening this meeting. Can you hear me? Is it good? Is it working?
Yes,
okay,
everything
great.
is fine.
Thank you. If at any time you will stop hearing me or seeing me, especially seeing me, please let me know, because maybe if I move and I will go out of the camera or something like this and I will not realize, okay? So thank you so much. My name is Monika Dubiel, and I will start, but before I start, I will just briefly tell you what we will do today, what is the schedule for today, to make you aware, to let you prepared for the whole meeting. So as Alicia mentioned, today's topic is autoethnography and the role that autoethnography plays in disability studies research. And we will start from our own reflections about it, my reflection and Gilli's reflection from our research experience. So now I will have a short presentation on this topic, then Gilli will give her speech. Then we would like to talk with you a little bit about it. Do you have any experience or with autoethnography so far or not? Then we would like to invite you to do some exercises related to autoethnography. And in the end, we will close up the meeting with, again, short discussion about the exercises, okay? And before I start, quick announcement related to things that we have planned for you to do during our practical part. We will use imaginary research situation. So please now think about ethnographic research that you would like to do. So basically think about the group that you would like to research. It might be, I don't know, football players. It might be Afro-American women. It might be Chinese children in Polish schools. It might be whatever community you can think about. Just think about the group that you would like to do research about to be prepared for our exercise. And also, we will, during these exercises, we will draw something. So please prepare a sheet of paper and something to write, like, I don't know, pencil, pen, or whatever, or any other stuff that you might find useful to drawing or to visualize something that you would like to visualize. Okay, so those are just technical announcements. And now I will pass to my presentation. Maybe before I start presentation, I will just introduce myself in terms of audio description of myself. For those who cannot see me, I'm a white woman with long brown hair. I'm wearing a dark green jumper, turtleneck jumper, and I'm sitting in my kitchen. So maybe there's part of my kitchen visible behind me. And if you see me using my phone, it's just because I'm checking out the time, okay? It's not like I'm texting or checking out the Facebook or something. Just I will use it to check the timing. Okay, now really I will start speaking about today's subject, which is autoethnography in disability studies research. My speech will be probably not very structured and not very strictly, planned as a presentation. It will be more just series of my reflections from the field, because I have just finished my 5-year research project, my doctoral project, which was about visually impaired artists in Mexico. And it was ethnographic research. Partially, it was ethnographic research. And it was something that motivated me a lot to think about autoethnography, and I used some elements of autoethnography during this research. So I would like to just share with you some of my experiences, thoughts, reflections, and all the output of this research. So basically, this research let me have like let me use my experience as a blind person in 2 ways. So I had this autoethnographical reflection about myself because of 2 reasons, because of 2 ways of 2 types of my experience. So one is a blind person as a researcher, and another is just or maybe I will say differently. One is just being blind person, which let me identify somehow with my informants who are blind people. And another is being researcher, and how I can address, the main question was how I can, address all the stuff that I want to, all the information that I want to get from them, but in the way that will be the best for them, right? So this experience is based on the fact that I used to be informant in many research projects so far, many research projects about blind people in general. And my experience was mainly good, but several times I had a feeling that the person who was conducting this research didn't know a lot about blind people and didn't do like proper research before. And many times I felt like irritated or ashamed of some questions. And based on this experience as an informant, I wanted to, use my experience of those when I was designing my research. So one of source of my reflection was this experience of being informant. Another source was being blind being blind person in general. So I was like thinking, okay, I'm blind person and I'm do this like this, and I was there and this was my experience, and I'm wondering how they do the same thing in Mexico, right? And speaking about this experience as a blind person from Poland going to Mexico, it was for me it was the first time when I was doing research abroad. So there are some things that we have in common. We are all blind. We live in a big city, because I mainly conducted my research in Mexico City. But of course, I'm not an artist, and I live in completely different circumstances. So I thought, okay, what experiences we have in common, and where can be some differences. So this was big part of my autoethnographical reflection before starting the research. How I can situate myself in relation to all those people. I also wanted to spend a lot of time with them to observe, for example, how do they move around the city, unless it wasn't strictly connected with the subject of my study, because I was interested in their artistic activity. So the most important part of my research was going to their rehearsals, going to their shows, going to their exhibitions, for example. But spending time with them, for example, going around the city, going out for dinner or something like this, was very, very important context, which let me better understand how do they function, like in daily terms, right? Each time I went out with them, I was comparing this experience with my own experience in Poland or in other countries in Europe. And it led me to identify some interesting differences, some shades, let's say, sometimes very small differences, but probably would be overlooked by a person who cannot who doesn't have this experience of being blind. And I also found some similarities. For example, a very funny example, which I always said after coming back from Mexico, is that people all around the world, of course, is overgeneralization because I have never been in Asia or Africa, but it's just a joke. Blind people all around the world go with backpacks instead of bags. Because, you know, when you are blind, you will go with white cane, so you have to have your hands free. So it's much more comfortable to use backpack instead of a bag. And I observed it in Poland. A lot of my friends go with backpacks, and I do too. And I realized in Mexico, they had the same. So it was very funny to discover that we all elaborate the same techniques to cope with daily problems of communication. Speaking about maybe something that surprised me, which I thought, because on the very beginning, I was like, okay, I'm a blind, so I know everything, how blind people function in their daily life, how do they work, how do they study, and so on. And what surprised me a lot was the fact that in Mexico, fact of being blind is not so important for your daily, for how do you like operate daily. Much more important are other social factors like, for example, your social class or your gender or something like this. And in this context, my autoethnographical reflection was very, very poor because I didn't take it into consideration on the very beginning. Because in Poland, in Europe generally, but I think in Poland especially, we don't pay so much attention to this fact to which social class we belong. It's not so strictly visible. And there in Mexico, for example, the way in which a blind person from the working class lives is completely different from the way in which a blind person in upper middle class lives. So those differences were very, very big. And it was one of those things which caught my attention at part of blindness, right? And it made me thinking about my, social privileges and so on. And this is example that resonated in my head with the very good book, a Polish book about autoethnography. I don't know, do you know it or not? But if not, I strongly recommend it. It was written by Marysia Reinman, a Polish ethnologist. Unfortunately, she passed away last year. And she wrote a book, Nie przywitam się z Państwem na ulicy. I will not say hello to you on the street. We can translate it like this. And she was a person with low vision, and she was an ethnologist, but she didn't investigate the community of person with visual impairment. She investigated the community of people with women with Turner syndrome, I think. Completely different kind of health condition. And while she was conducting her study on this community, she, like on the margin of her scientific activity, she started to reflect on her own condition, which was completely different and didn't have nothing to do with the thing that she was investigated. But her ethnologic sensibility made her thinking about her own condition. And it happened to me exactly, it was something that happened to me exactly in Mexico, that I was investigating blindness, but the thing that caught my attention was all this, social issues, social class issue. And I had this reflection, like we can say, on the margin of of the reflection on the main subject of my research. So I'm just giving this example to show you that autoethnographical reflection during your research doesn't have to be related to the exact subject of the research, right? It might be something completely apart. Just your research and your ethnographical sensibility, let's say, can be kind of trigger for your reflection, for the autoethnographical reflection. That's the main conclusion that I would draw from this experience. And I think that for the moment, that's it from my part. I will leave the floor for Gilli, and then we will have discussion all together about also maybe your own experiences with autoethnography, or maybe your reflection. How do you find it? What do you think about it, and so on?
Thank you, Monika. So hi everyone, I'm Gilli. I'm a cultural anthropologist from the Hebrew University. And thank you so much, Monika, for inviting me and initiating this discussion. And thank you really, Magda, and all the scholars that established this platform. It's so important to have a discussion and platform to talk about disability studies outside the context of North America and Western Europe. So thank you so much for having this space. And I really love methodology. I teach a lot of methodological courses, and I always tell my students that for methodology, you do theory. So I think that, Monika, you gave wonderful examples of how your methodological awareness made you pay attention to new analytical themes that you didn't think about. So you actually made a new theory. So I loved your examples. I will divide my short time into 4 sections. I'll start with just an opening ethnographic example. Then I will introduce my studies just in very general terms. I will give a brief theoretical background about autoethnography and reflexivity, and we'll end with just a very short example of my autoethnographic writing for my research with dancers with disabilities. So I'll share my PowerPoint, and while I'm sharing it, I'll just say that in terms of audio description, it's mainly text that I read, but if I have images, I will try my best to describe them. There aren't many images. And just in terms of myself, so I'm a white woman in my 40s. I have a brownish reddish hair that reaches my shoulders. I'm wearing black shirts with many tiny white dots, and I'm sitting in my bedroom. My husband and 2 little kids are in the living room because in Israel, Friday afternoon is the beginning of the weekend. I hope they will not make too much noise, and they are waiting patiently for the start of the weekend. So I will start, and if you don't hear me, sorry, I didn't hear, sorry. And if there is a problem and you don't hear me or you don't see me, please let me know, because when my PowerPoint is up, I don't see you, the participants. Okay, so I'll start with a quote for my research. So, you want a tour of the center? Okay, but we'll do it my way, the guide said to me, pulling an eye cover out of his desk and placing it on the table. This was the beginning of a conversation that took place when I conducted a research observation, so-called, with my eyes closed. In 2009, during my first visit to a guide dog center for the blind in Israel, I met with an experienced staff person, a blind man in his 50s, an integral member of the training team, who took on the informal role of gatekeeper after my request to tour the center. He insisted I articulate my intentions and goals, and after I spent some time with him and tried my best to leave a good impression, he made an unexpected offer that asked for a profound methodological adjustment on my behalf. as he conditioned his collaboration with one simple request, that I would be blindfolded for the entire visit at the center and study it through my senses other than sight. This experience, which I return to and describe in details in my book and other writings, by no means offered me an understanding of how blindness feels, nor was it intended to do so. Rather, it was designed to raise my awareness of the rich non-visual information available in every social activity and fieldwork observation, and later caused me to recognize the lack of proper terms available within the vocabulary of qualitative research. Even I don't have another word other than observation to call it, and in Hebrew the word interview is based on the root of the word to see. So we are really using very visual vocabulary in qualitative research. My visit to the Guide Dog Center was only one incident among numerous conversations, interaction, and experience I encountered during my study on blindness, which problematized the common binary of researched relations, and raise issues of power relations, authority, and voice, which are central to disability studies. Some background on what I do. So for the last 18 years, I've been studying the performance of disability, how people with and without disabilities negotiate such definitions in their daily lives and on stage in professional setting of performance. I started with research on blindness, and on the screen is an image of the cover of my book, which is called Blindness Through the Looking Glass, the Performance of Blindness, Gender, and the Sensory Body. The cover is pink, and it has a drawing just of a black line of a woman looking sideways. Because we have a methodological session, I will not go into the research questions and findings and theory, but please, I will be happy to talk about it later or in future communication. But I worked for almost a decade with blind women and made 3 years of field work in places where blind people meet and interact among themselves, and with sighted people in context of education, rehabilitation, culture, and sport. That led me to my second field of research, which was integrated dance in Israel and the US. I studied 6 different dance companies, integrated dance companies from different styles. On the screen is an image from one research site, which is an integrated contact improvisation setting in Israel. And you can see 2 dancers, one using a wheelchair, the other is non-disabled, trying to do the same kind of movement, leaning backward and raising one hand. And in my studies, I call this kind of communication embodied translation, when a kinesthetic movement is trying to pass between people with different bodies. And my most current study was about intersensory communication in a blind deaf theater. On the screen are 2 actresses. One is deaf, the other one is hearing, trying to learn a word in sign language. And this is a theater that is located in Jaffa, Israel. And it is not only very varied in terms of sensory experiences, but also other cultural backgrounds. Jaffa is a mixed city of Jewish and Arab people, and new immigrants and Israelis, and it is very, very diverse. So I studied the daily life of the theater and also aesthetic representations of different senses and ability and disability. And my project that I work on now is about disability performance art in the Global East. We call it the Global East, and with a colleague we hope to study disability performance art in the Middle East, in East Asia, with a focus on Japan and Eastern Europe. So I would love to hear more when we have the time from your experiences. A little bit of background on autoethnography and reflexive research methods. In my studies, I rely on the importance heritage of reflexive awareness in 2 fields: disability studies, mainly critical studies of blindness, and anthropology, specifically feminist and indigenous ethnography. I employ these lines of thought to ask, what are some of the counterpoints between my interview's narratives of, in my case, the visual or the moving body, and my own as the ethnographer? In reflecting on my positionality and the ways it informs my analysis, I embrace an autoethnographic sensitivity that has long directed works focused on disability, such as those of Murphy with his book The Body Silent, or Zola, the book The Missing Pieces, a chronicle of living with a disability. And I understand reflexivity, as was discussed in feminist methodology, and I quote, the process by which an anthropologist understands how her social background influences and shapes her beliefs, and how this self-awareness pertains to what and how she observes, attributes meanings, interprets actions and dialogues with her informants. A somewhat similar reflexive awareness was offered by Georgina Klieg, who I saw is also with us now, which is an honor, who noted in her book Sight Unseen that while writing her book made her blind, it also made her recognize how sighted I am. And in recognizing the role of her writing in shaping her understanding of her own identity as a blind woman, Klieg's reflexive awareness informed her analysis of the cultural image of blindness and the characteristic of visual culture. 1 minute, sorry. Okay. When inserting such reflexive awareness to my work on blindness, what I did, I tried to listen to the tension blind women describe experiencing between visibility and invisibility in their lives. I tried to identify both the component and context most crucial for each woman's story. I interviewed 40 blind women that are blind from birth, but I also wanted to explore how my experience of the visual was shaped mainly by feeling highly visible and yet also invisible as a woman in visual culture, and how it was set in the physical context where I grew up. So in the last chapter of my book, the epilogue, I do this kind of autoethnography. I take the questions that I asked my research participants about being a blind woman in visual culture and direct them to my own social biography as a sighted woman. And also, I try to use the reflexivity to assess critically my own gaze, and I was trying to use it to think about the question I encountered again and again during the course of my work about my position as a sighted woman researcher, specifically why a sighted researcher would be interested in blindness. And I can share that the first time I encountered this concern was in 2007, when I nervously sat down to make my first phone call to a potential participant, a woman whose contact information I had received from a service center for blind people in the city where I lived. And after I explained my research topic and the interview structure, I heard a long pause. A few seconds passed before the woman asked me, "Are you blind?" And my lack of preparation for the question led me to recognize the deficit in the attention given to ability and disability within the ethnographic theory outside disability studies. But also the frequency of this question concerned me. I asked myself, why am I being asked this so often, while my colleagues encounter questions about their position or motives for choosing research topic much less frequently? What is it about blindness and my sightedness that raises this query, I asked myself. I used the reflexive research method to first acknowledge that one possible answer to this justified concern is based on the history of past studies on blindness. Monika talked about it a little bit, that have too often been carried out and written from a sighted ableist position, which silence blind people's own voices, treating blindness as a problem in need of solution in education, public policy, and health. But reflexive research methods do not stop there and help me to understand that these questions I received about being sighted actually reveal some of the very assumptions about vision, knowledge, and agency my work challenges. Such questions hold binary and even stigmatize assumption on what knowledge is and who holds it. And in my writing, I try to demonstrate that the day-to-day methodological reality in my field was much more complex than any simple binary, as research participants commonly challenge researched power relations and constantly challenge the association of knowledge only with seeing and sight. In addition to relying on reflexive awareness in disability studies, I also use the help of the way we are turning the gaze to us, the researcher, in anthropology, mainly in what is called post-crisis of representation anthropology, and examining the, for example, ethnic, gender, and religious aspect of our own biography. we typically ask ourselves, why and how do we research those who are or aren't like us? Feminist anthropologists such as Ruth Behar have asked us to engage not simply in participant observation, but the observation of participation. Scholars have asked us to gather the courage to be exposed and vulnerable. Barbara Meyerhoff, for example, in the opening image of her ethnographic film In Her Own Time, shared the X-ray of her lungs covered with white spots of cancer, and on the screen is an image of the X-ray. This image is a statement about her position exploring Orthodox Judaism and spiritual rituals. And ethnographers of performance and indigenous research have brought forward ethical principles that should also be adopted by all dominant universities and researchers. Wilson, in his book, for example, it is called Research in Ceremony, posits respect, reciprocity, and relationality as the 3 R's of indigenous methodologists, and explain respect is more than just saying please and thank you, and reciprocity is more than giving a gift. I use scholarly initiatives such as those to weave biography and scholarship. In my almost decade of work on disability dance, I ask again, who am I? What does my research blur and reflect? What comes up if I jump into the pool of shaky water that this time brings forward my position as a non-disabled, non-dancer anthropologist? And I will share the short autoethnography on this aspect. As a child, I was sick for almost a year. The medical details are not important, and writing this, I try best to avoid what happened to you medical narrative pointed by the normalizing and voyeuristic gaze at people with disabilities. I finally began to recover in the springtime, and I remember being aware of the way people looked at me. I had lost so much weight that year that at times people gasped at the sight of me, spewing comments that made me horrifically ashamed of the way I looked. Working in the field of disability dance and hearing so many narratives of people with disabilities, some became world-leading dancers about what their bodies can't do, how their parents were advised to leave them at the hospital, and how they were always talked about, rather within medical context, made me realize how this childhood sickness, which left me with a body supposedly unfit to my age and gender, also made me acquainted a visitor in what Neil Marcus called disability country. And on the screen is an image from the disabled country, a famous video that Neil Marcus made. So it made me a visitor in a country of bodies people and children make fun of bodies people stare at. This realization formulated in the 5th year of fieldwork when conducting participant observations of online integrated contact improvisation workshops. So most of my fieldwork was face-to-face, but during 2 years it was COVID in between. So I also participate in online integrated dance workshops. One of them was led by Tali and Chai, which are the director and choreographers of the leading Israeli contact improvisation dance platform. It is called The Power of Balance, Vertigo, The Power of Balance, and on the screen is an image of Tali and Chai dance together. Chai is in his wheelchair, leaning forward, and Tali is standing in front of him, looking at the side. Maybe it was the private space, maybe it was dancing by myself at home and turning the gaze inward that made this awareness that I will tell you about possible. At the first session of the 5 workshops, Tali and Chai asked the participants to exercise different dance scores. We were asked to take a walk around the house, choose 4 places, and choose the dance move or score to each location. When returning to Zoom, each of us put together the 4 movements into a full movement sentence, and on the screen is an image from this Zoom. You can see about 16 small squares of people dancing in their homes. Tali asked us to practice and dance the same sentence from 3 different zones that generate movement. She called it the mind. How does it look? Am I doing it right? The zone of feelings or emotions, and the world of what she called the stomach. intuition, creativity, fire, livelihood. This exercise sent me into a journey. It brought back the 9-year-old girl who, after recovering from sickness, was sent to physiotherapy, which now I can define as done from a medical model, with the goal to normalize my body to walk straight, proper. It brought up how much I suffered in those sessions, becoming so aware of the wrong direction in which I rotate my knees when walking. Tali's guided imagery of movement from the worlds of the mind, emotions, and intuition brought back my first dance classes at the age of 12 and the girls who made fun at me and my body. It brought back memories of the bodies I was trained to work against rather than with, an untruthful body. In the second session, Tali asked us to think which world of movement we want to expand and develop, and asked to do that, I quote, not from the position of lack. I understood what she meant, but found it very hard to truly embody. The experience of lack is so strong and constitutive to me. Tali's word made me want to go back to that girl on which I tried so many years not to think, and just to keep her safe, to think of what I would have told her today. That nobody talks about her when she doesn't understand, to tell her that her body has both weakness and strength, that you can be both, and that it is okay not to know. The acknowledgement I crystallized in the Zoom workshops doesn't mean that I know what it is like to be a person with a disability, and of course not with visible disability, but rather that I exercise some intimate encounters with some of the experiences I've been documenting for years by more than 70 people I interviewed and became friends with. Tali's dance course allowed me to put together intuition, heart, and mind. And like a dancer rolling in precise circles in the air in her pirouettes, I knew I need to balance the different parts. I tried to dance and write from the stomach, the guts, to put aside the heaviness, the thoughts, to become circular, fast, to enjoy, to delight with movements and words. To conclude, Virginia Dominguez is asking us to practice in fieldwork what she calls genuine love, respect, and affection for the people we study. She explained that it doesn't mean A, presenting only positive characteristics of people in our writing, B, eliding conflict, violence, or debate, or C, feeling guilty about our own geopolitically defined position that we treat those we consult with kid gloves in the field and in our published writings. Beth Omansky offers in her work on borderlands of legal blindness, integrating her position as a blind researcher into her analysis another nuanced approach, and she writes, it is necessary to understand from the outset that positioning insiders and outsiders as binary would be misleading. Such a false separation fails to acknowledge that research is an interactive process. No two people share all identities with anyone else. For that reason, no researcher can be either a complete insider or outsider. In July 2020, Vertigo Dance Company celebrated a festive 30 years anniversary, and a day was dedicated to the work of the integrated platform. And on the screen is an image from the day. You can see the title Vertigo 30 Years, Vertigo Power of Balance, and a blurry image of some people dancing in the background. Before the panel I was also part of, an outside integrated ensemble performed. It included interviewees, friends, collaborators. When watching them, I sketched words that came to my fingertips, in which I shared later with Tali and Chai. This is what I wrote, and with this I will end. So I wanted to show you just some of the video of the dance, and while it will play, I will read what I wrote about the show. Let me just share again with sound. Okay, sorry for the 1 minute. I will put it the video kind of not very loud, so you can hear me talking, and let me know if it doesn't work or you don't hear me. So the video is of about a group of about 18 people dancing in outdoors. It's a space in the most famous dance theater in Tel Aviv. It is called the Susan Dalal. This is an outdoor space You can see arches in the background, and they move in a circle, some of them using wheelchairs, some of them has invisible disabilities, a group of integrated performance. So I saw this performance, and this is what I wrote. With this, I will end my presentation. Conglomerate of different abilities move from one end to the other between the arches of the square. Duets are coming out like branches of balances and supports, playing with there is, there isn't, and with points of nothingness and existence. There's no leader and led, no first and last. Bare feet on stone tiles, in a piece of shade in the hot Tel Aviv sun. Like a satellite, one of the dancers circulates and marks movement. Dancer unto dancer, some forward to a poetic of age and color. Chairs, legs, scratches, wheels, hands, arms, soft fabrics, fallen bodies, direction of gazes, sharpness and softness, freeze and movement, elbows, fingers, the sound of wheels, the silence of bare feet, to dance a change that becomes bigger than you. And I'll just stop sharing, sorry. Okay, thank you. Monika, I will pass it to you. You hear me, Monika?
I think that we can pass the voice to Monika. I'm not sure if Monika is hearing us.
Monika, you are mute.
Monika.
Sorry,
please.
I've got the problem with my mic.
Okay.
Because it was muted. And now can you hear me?
Yes.
Perfect.
Yes.
So thank you, Gilli, so much for this very, very interesting presentation. And now I would like to invite everybody for brief discussion about what we have just heard and maybe about your own experience or reflection. If you have any experience with autoethnography, we would love you to share with us. And if you don't, but maybe you have some reflection about it after listening to my and Gilli's story, we are also we would be really happy to hear that too. So if there is anybody who would like to share with us any thoughts, please raise your hand, and Gilli will moderate the queue for the mic. Okay.
Please feel free to ask questions to Monika Dubiel and Gilli Hammer, and you can also feel free to write on chat. In any case, if somebody can't talk or doesn't want to talk, but just want to share thoughts and questions on chat, I'm looking on the chat, and then I will read this chat to Monika and Gilli. I see Milena Trojanowska raised her hand.
Okay, yes, thank you. So at the very beginning, I would like to say thank you to Monika and Gilli. That was a very, very inspiring session. Thank you for that. And actually, during this session, I had this thought that I had a very similar experience as Monika about this being person with disability in a very different social and cultural context. And I would like to ask you, Monika, what was your thoughts when you were in Mexico City? And like you said, social context is maybe more important in Mexico than in Poland. And you said that social context was more important than the fact that you have a visual disability. Why am I asking? Because I was doing my autoethnography research for like a 4 or 5 years. Yes, I am a person with disability, but in some context, I had this experience like nobody wants me to be a person with disability. Like when I was spending time with Polish national rugby team, all of them are wheelchair users. Some of them have MS like me, and they expect me not to feel a person with disability because I'm able to walk, because it's not possible to see my disability.
You are not disabled enough.
Yes, I was not, but on the other hand, in any other context, I am. So that was a weird feeling for me. And yeah, my question was, did you ever have this kind of experience when you were changing a social context, when you were abroad? Maybe there was a situation when you were feeling less or more person with disability. I'm very interested about these things.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for this question. I think maybe it not be for the moment the very direct answer for a question, but I would say that I'm a blind person, so there is no doubt that I'm disabled, and I cannot be more disabled in terms of visual impairment. So it makes it clear from the very beginning. So probably, but I get your point. I mean, for example, it's not my personal case, but I have some friends who are visually impaired, but not blind. They are people with low vision, and they don't walk with white cane. They don't use glasses. So at the first glance, you think that they don't have any problem, and it happens to them very often. For example, in the shop or whenever they ask for something. For example, can you please tell me how much is the bread? And the answer is, it is written. You cannot see. I was like, no, I cannot see. So maybe you should buy some glasses or something. So this kind of situation happens very, very often to people who has disability, but not it's not visible at the first moment, right? It's not my case, because in my case it's visible. However, sometimes, of course, when I'm sitting somewhere and that I don't have white cane with me, it's sometimes there is this kind of confusion. Anyway, I think it's very visible in my case because of my eyes. I have very specific eyes, and if someone just pays attention to my face and how my eyes look like, it's quite obvious that I'm blind, but probably not everybody does it. But what can I say in relation to what you mentioned about this cultural differences? For me, it was interesting because sorry. Because here this is chat, it's speaking to me now. Okay, the social context that you mentioned, right? It was something new for me, that the differences are so big between blind people. Because in Poland, when I think about blind people that I know, and even generally people that I know, not only blind people, we all more or less have the same life level, life condition. We all, finished high school. Most of people I know, most of blind people even have higher education. Most of them work somehow. They they do more or less similar stuff, and they don't earn a lot of money, let's say, just like average stuff, you know, they live alone, they don't have servants at home and so on. And in Mexico, it was really, really big difference between people from upper middle class who have cook, who have person who cleans their house, who have, I don't know, so many stuff, and another person from working class who even didn't completed a higher education, middle education, right? So just the primary school, even not high school. So this was for me interesting differences between, you know, social contexts, Polish and Mexican context. That our group here is much more homogenic in terms of social and cultural background. So yeah, this was the biggest surprise, and it was something that made me sometimes feel as this stupid researcher, you know, like sighted researcher asking blind person, how do you cook for yourself, or how do you dress up, or whatever, which always irritates me so much. And I caught myself in the situation when I was doing exactly the same, but not in terms of blindness, but in terms, for example, of, I don't know, education. I just took for granted that all of them could attend school, and it wasn't obvious. I mean, most of them from the working class who gained their visual impairment in childhood couldn't continue education. I mean, they finished their education in the primary school, like third grade or something, which is impossible in Poland because we have, you know, obligatory education. So yeah, this was in my case this thing that made me feel totally differently sometimes.
Okay. Thank you
Okay.
so much. If I may say a few words. Yeah. That's very interesting. I have this feeling like you said that this social context does not influence your experience as a person with visual impairments. That's very interesting for me.
I mean, I wouldn't say that it doesn't influence, of course,
But-
but not to that extent as in
Okay.
Mexico does, I would say.
Okay.
You know.
Oh, okay. So,
Okay.
Yeah.
this explanation. Okay, thank you.
Also, as a moderator, I have this not so thankful role to keep the time. And I would like to give voice to Magdalena Zdrodowska, who was raising her hand. I remember it. And then to one person on the chat. And I've got this signal that later we should move to another section to keep the time. So I give the voice to Magdalena Zdrodowska, and later I will read the one question from the chat. Okay. This is my role as moderator.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your amazing contributions. And from my perspective as a researcher without disability yet, it was very interesting for me to hear Gilli, your autobiographical story. And I would like to share my autoethnographic research story as well, because I'm doing research on deaf culture, on deaf communities, and it would be extremely hard for me as a hearing person to like to have an experience of deafness as the people that I interview or whose art I'm or cultural texts I'm analyzing. But for me, this some kind of autoethnographic experience was being at Gallaudet University in Washington, which is like this ideal deaf space where American Sign Language is one of the languages used in education. There are very many deaf people, deaf faculties, and I was there for several weeks and not signing American Sign Language. I really had this hint of experience of a deaf person in hearing society with like people not having time and patience to write on pieces of papers something to me, or it was impossible for me to make a joke because it took too long to write something funny and it didn't work. So there are some very specific, I would say, like circumstances in which we can have this similar experience, but my experience is that it is so hard to like achieve that, being a researcher without disability. Yeah, so maybe Gilli, if you can comment on that together with answering Magda Dunaj's comment.
Yes, of course. Would you like us to read from the chat first, or should I answer?
Yes, if you can read, maybe for those who cannot read it, it would be perfect.
The chat question, sorry, 1 minute. So the chat question was, how do you support your students in developing their autoethnographic sensitivity, which really follow what Magdalena asked. And okay, so I will try to combine also Milena, really great comments. Also your example, Magda. First of all, it is the circumstances are really important, and sometimes we can only get them through ethnographic research. So only being within, right, Milena? If you weren't spending time with the people you study, you wouldn't get this sensitivity that maybe you are, let's say, not disabled enough. So it's really interesting how identities shift. Yeah, in one context you are disabled, in another you are not. I can say that when I started studying dancers, actually me being non-dancer was much more important than me being non-disabled. This was a much a crucial issue that dividing us than the disability issue. So it was very different than my study on blindness, that we shared many statuses, being women, being the same age. I was a student when I started it. I worked with students. So them being blind and me being sighted was an issue, but with the dancers, the professional identity was much stronger. So it's important to pay attention. And also, I think what you said, Milena, is exactly what Beto Mansky says, that there isn't a complete insider and complete outsider. There are always differences. And from this point, we make our theory, right? Because from this comment you got from your people, you can ask them maybe about how they relate to the chair. Why is it so important in their identity? For example, in my study with the dancers using wheelchair, I wrote on human-object relations. So it made me look for a new theory because of the comments I heard about the wheelchairs and about mobility need and, you know, the cyborg identity. So this is exactly the points when reflexivity turns into analytical awareness. And in terms of deafness, I had a little bit of experience in the theater. I worked with a research assistant who is fluent in Israeli Sign Language. I don't speak sign language very well. So we did field work together, which was also an interesting experience because always anthropologists, we work alone. So it was interesting to do all the field work together. And she covered kind of all the sign language conversations, and I covered all the spoken conversations, and she did the sign language interviews. And then there is a whole issue of how you textualize them, right, from the videos. But what I ask my students when I give the example is to try to think of when they had to get out of what I call the sensory comfort zone. So like happened to you in Washington, because we all had this experience that we felt excluded or that we had to get out of the embodied and sensory comfort zone. in Israel, in my campus, you know, it's a very mixed campus. We have religious, we have secular, we have Palestinians, we have Israeli, we have people from all social backgrounds in my campus, and many women, both Palestinian and Israeli, and Jewish and Christian, share different types of experiences of being excluded because of gender, for example. So this is, for example, if I also answer the chat, and now we will move to the exercise we prepared that maybe would also give some examples. I try to make them relate to when they were out of their sensory comfort zone and had to really do this kind of intersensory communication and embody the knowledge. And maybe, Monika, this is a good time to start our exercises.
Yeah. I think it was
Okay.
perfect bridge for the part of exercise.
Okay, Monika and Gilli, just the last question from the chat.
Okay.
Really the last. From Monika Świerkosz, who asked a question to Gilli. Can you say something more about the method of sensory knowledge? That's shocking.
Maybe, if it's okay, maybe we will leave it to the next discussion after the exercises, because we can first try to feel it in writing, and then we can talk about it if it's okay. And I would love to keep the conversation also after the Zoom ends. Monika, I will let you introduce the
Okay. Great. So finishing this part, I would just to give very brief comment to what have Magda Zdrojowska said, and it might be a bridge also to what we will do now. The situation that you mentioned in Gallaudet, that you couldn't, for example, say some jokes because it took too much time to write it down. I think it is a situation which is very familiar to anybody who had ever started to study a foreign language and then go to the country. I remember, for example, it was my experience when I went to Spain for the first time. I already, spoke Spanish more or less, but when you want to say joke, you have to be very quick because, 5 minutes later, it's not funny anymore, right? So even going out of disability situation, you can imagine very daily situation which made you somehow disabled, like in communication, right? And now, in our exercise, we will exactly do this thing. So we will encourage you to think how you can relate this experience, which might be so distant from your experience, to your own experience. And there will be two part of this exercise. I think Gilli, you wanted to introduce the first part, right?
Yeah.
I will introduce the second part, but this is the moment when you will need this sheet of paper and something to write down, or you may use your computer and draw the table in your document, whatever. And also you will need your research group, research community now to think about it.
Okay, so what I ask you to do is to please draw 2 separate circles. Under one, please write me, and under the other one, write them. I'll show you how it looks on my sheet of paper. Okay. And try to fill in what comes to mind without overthinking it. Just, being quick with what the first things, labels, categories, identity that come to mind, other than me, the researcher, and them, the research participants. Okay, let's take 2 minutes to do this. Milena, I only see you, so are you kind of finished? Is it enough time? Okay, Monica, you want to set the next exercise?
Yes. So now we would like you to take another piece of paper and again draw two circles, but this time they have to cross, they have to overlap. So now we have three parts, one on the left, another on the right, and one is shared by both circles, right? And in the one side, we would like you to write down me. On another side, we would like you to write them. But then in this part that overlaps, we would like you to write we. And we would like you to think about those characteristics that you might have in common. So using these labels or thoughts or whatever you produced in the former part, in the circle called me and in the circle called them, we would like you to relate somehow. Like, for example, if I would do the research about Afro-American women in the United States, I would say that what we have in common is that we are women, right? So we would like to think you about this labels or experience or whatever you might have in common. And again, we will leave you like 2 minutes for that, I think.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, everyone who were courageous enough to participate. And now we would love if anyone wants, you don't have to, if anyone wants to share or tell either what you wrote in the circles or how it was for you to do this exercise, if it was challenging or surprising, or how did it feel?
If I can start, I would like to say that I had some reflection about the tension between what is private and what is professional. Because we can't play that our private experiences don't have any impact on our research. They always have more or less. And I think in our times, not too much people believe anymore in this ideal of objective 19th century scientists who look through the microscope to some society. Yes, we try to be professional, but also there is this tension between private life and professional. And sometimes, for example, I'm thinking about, because last time I'm interested in neurodiversity and neurodiverse community. And sometimes it's a problem how it's always interesting to me, this looking through the neurodivergent lenses. For example, neurotypical society. And it's a question. And also there are evidences, I read in some publications in journals that, for example, those scholars who belong to some minorities are considered as not professional enough. There is such belief. And when I'm thinking about, for example, this what is in common, this exercise from Monika's side, I would say maybe it's banal what I'm saying, but we are all human beings. And all of us have some struggles and privileges. Sometimes it's really dynamic. process, but we are all humans. And
Thank
that's
you.
from my
It's beautiful. Thank you. Anyone else would like to share? Magda, yeah.
Okay, so maybe I will go next. I think I a little bit misunderstood your instructions. So it was not maybe that much in terms of identity, but what we have and don't have, and what we exchange during this we part. But also from my perspective as a researcher, there is also always something that I want to know, and I'm in this very insecure position of someone who asks and wants something from someone else, from the person that I'm interviewing. So there is so these participants are bearers of knowledge, and they are part of the network that I would like to access, and to access some more people. So my experience is also like being someone who asks for something. And this common part, I have defined this as communication and time. So it is very much in this terms of like meeting, face-to-face meeting. So that's something that is like being together. Yeah.
I think this is really interesting. Maybe I'll comment and then I'll pass it to Monika. So I think first of all, what first you told about private and academic is really important. When we have more time, we do 3 layers exercise. We do the just me and them, then academic me and them, and then personal me and them. And it's really interesting to see what happens when we mix the layers of personal and academic. And so it is a very interesting comment. And I think, yeah, Magda, we don't have to put identity. We can also put shared interest. For example, what you talked about is really the class of knowledge production. So sometimes we share with our participants that we both want to create knowledge or explore knowledge. I felt it very strongly with the choreographers in my fields. So the choreographer, I felt he's like an anthropologist, only that his product is movement and I work with textual product, but we both explore very big analytical themes and do research, and sometimes even they do interviews and they need to decide about the music and the custom and the lighting, and they have an artistic product. So we had a lot of common language in terms of we both explore culture. So it is what Pierre Bourdieu called the class of knowledge production. So it's another really nice example. And I think that what at least I wanted to say about this exercise, I'm also curious to hear you, Monika, that the we part is really what we thought about as cultural mediation. So what kind of tools we have that allow us to talk both languages, the language of me and the language of them, all the separation. So the we part is really our job as cultural mediations, and the kind of tools and experiences that we have that allow us to talk both languages. It's a very strong issue in indigenous research, that indigenous people, something that they have is this being cultural mediation, that many times they can talk or participate in the hegemonic culture, but also in their own marginal culture. And this is one thing that we wanted to bring forward. And Monika, maybe I can pass it to you.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think you explained it very well. I will just add maybe to this we part, this cultural mediation, but you know, is how to say, there are 2 flips of this coin. I mean, on the one hand, it is something that if we investigate some community that seems very distant from us, we really need to look for this we part, and we have to really deep reflect on us and them to find something in common. And that's probably what most of you were thinking about. But on the other side, I mean, on the other hand, sometimes this we part is so obvious that we tend to overestimate it. It was my case with Mexico, right? I thought, okay, the we part is that we are blind. I'm blind. They are blind. I know everything about blindness, yes. And it turned out that I didn't know nothing. I didn't know nothing about the life of blind people in Mexico. So, and for example, if I did some research on disability in Poland, but not only about visual impairment, but for example, I don't know, like deaf people or people with mobility problems, it would be the same. I mean, we are all disabled, so I could think that I know everything, about exclusion and so on because I'm disabled, but I don't know some specific daily problems, barriers, challenges, so on that they face, because I don't know. I mean, it's changed now, but 2-3 years ago, I didn't know nothing about life of deaf people. So the thing I'm trying to say is that this exercise may help us in finding something in common, but also to situate us in the right distance to this we part, to not overestimate our participation in this we part. And that's it from my side.
May I say something? I would like to share my experience, because when I think about me in terms of me, I feel extremely alone. And I think that we are all like social creatures, yes. And it is our common experience to seek for something that is common for everyone. I don't know if you know what I mean. It's like this feeling when we are talking with someone and suddenly we realize that we have like the same hobby, and just like click, yes.
Yeah.
We have this platform to share some experience, to talk, to start this conversation. And when I think about we, this is something that make me feel much more comfortable. Yeah, and it's a great feeling, much better than feeling alone, just with me. But on the other hand, them is something that is quite far away, something that is not so common. So it's when I'm thinking about them, it makes me feel like who they are, why they are not in this we part. Yes, maybe they're too far away from me, and why do I think about this way? Yeah, it's very, very interesting exercise, and thank you for this. I think I will be thinking about this for next few hours. Yes. So simple and so important. Yeah, very important. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think we are approaching the end. So if there is any last question or comment or something.
Yes, I saw that there was a question from Magdalena Dunaj.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure now she crossed her video, but I see that Magdalena Dunaj is with us, so please feel free to ask a question and share your thoughts with us.
Gilli answered the question already. She did it.
Okay.
So
Okay.
thank you.
So if it's okay, I will share the very last slide we have for the meeting that kind of concludes what we wanted to present in the exercise. Just one moment. So these circles are trying to illustrate something that we ask a lot in ethnography. We ask, what are the partitions between us and them, and what do we share with our interlocutors, our assets in our studies? And if I go back to indigenous study, I just wanted to end with a quote from Wilson from Research in Ceremony. And he writes, one of the great strengths that indigenous scholars bring with them is the ability to see and work within both indigenous and dominant worldviews. This becomes of great importance when working with dominant systems academics who are usually not bicultural. As part of their white privilege, there is no requirement for them to be able to see other ways of being and doing, or even to recognize that they exist. Oftentimes then, ideas coming from a different worldview are outside of their entire mindset and way of thinking. The ability to bridge this gap becomes important in order to ease the tension that it creates. So thank you so much for listening.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that.
I also want to say big thank you to Monika Dubiel and to Gilli Hammer. I'm also saying really great thank you to everyone who was present with us. I'm glad that we could meet together. And yes, it's a pity that Mrs. Isabella couldn't be with us. I mean, Mrs. Isabella Sopalska-Rybak. It's a pity that she couldn't be with us, but I hope that she will recover soon and we'll meet her with another event or during another opportunity. So I think that we can coming to the end of our meeting, and I would like to say thank you, Monika, thank you, Gilli. I'm really glad that we could meet all together and listen to your discussion and listen to your experiences. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for moderating this this meeting. Thank you for your support.
Yes, thank you so much.
It was so great. Yeah, Alicia, thank you for being host for this meeting. And a very last thing, next month, we are meeting also for on the last Friday of the month, and we'll be talking about deaf spaces in museums and exhibition spaces. So please beware and have a look at our website and Facebook page. We'll announce next seminar soon. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
You.
Thank you so much.
Goodbye.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye.